Alrighty. The Visiting Artist Program, funded by PAFA's graduate program, brings an outstanding roster of local, national, and international artists to PAFA each semester for lectures, critiques, and workshops. The program exposes students and the public to a range of artistic approaches and fosters discussions about contemporary art and ideas. This afternoon, we are pleased to have Lex Brown joining us. Lex Brown is an artist, musician, and writer. Her work is informed by the omnipresence of data, information, and media, and how its images condition our bodies and language. Fluctuating between humor and seriousness, the work opens up a space for spirited examination, often drawing on family history and current and historical events. Brown has performed and exhibited work at the New Museum, the High Line, the International Center of Photography, Recess and the Kitchen in New York, REDCAT Theater and the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, the Baltimore Museum of Art in Baltimore, and at the Munch Museum in Oslo, Norway. Brown holds degrees from Yale and Princeton University and teaches at Harvard University as a college fellow in theater, dance, and media, and art, film, and visual studies. She also teaches at Princeton University as a lecturer in visual arts. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lex. You may now begin sharing your screen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in the middle of this Tuesday before tomorrow, whatever that will be. I'm really excited to be talking to you about my work today and going to try to cover a lot of ground in a concise way so that there's plenty of time for questions. I work in drawing, performance, music, as well as writing. And so I'm going to start off with a essay that I wrote for the catalog for Get Your Life, which is a youth video collective that was active in Baltimore from 2014 to 2016. And this was for their show at the Baltimore Museum, and the essay is called "To Be Big and Be Seen, the Mirror, the Self, a Host for Dreams." Many times while half asleep, I can feel my soul camped out in my body. I feel an essential part of my being, different than Lex, the person who loves to roller skate and is obsessed with MasterChef, the person who's educating herself about T-bonds and long-term investments. The artist who doesn't know how to outrun the maze of the techno-political state, but is going to keep shopping at Amazon. A woman who is Black, and we'll mention it here because that's what everyone wants to talk about these days. Somehow that person and all of her that is earthbound sleeps while another part inside of me lies awake. It is the sound of a train cutting through the clear night. It is the water that keeps on flowing. I lie there, more than merely a body alive, but alert as the pure nerve of life itself. Like a fragment of a star, I can feel a force within my body pierce through the ether of sleep, thunderously alive and wildly undead. I have always loved and feared the cloak of night. It is when we are perhaps most ourselves, most vulnerable and malleable, temporarily unconfigured before and after the day. It was in this same space of potentiality that I first began to love theater as a kid. Of all of society's arenas, the black box, the lights, the costumes, the theater seemed to be the most truthful. It offered a space to play with, but more importantly, acknowledge the construction of values, identities, characters, and entire places and times. Our first virtual reality, my first love, a place to be absolutely alive. When I began to make video at 20, it was nothing short of a revelation to me. You could say I began to get my life. I found a place to put my ache for the nighttime feeling. In video, there was enough room for myself, for my body and my spirit, enough room for the sage and the clown. I found a space for my own self, and more and less than that, to make work about the isms and to float around them, to build cities and stories, to mess with time, language, sound, to be fast and untethered. And the essay continues, but I like to start with that because so much of my work has come out of this quest or sensitivity to, I suppose, like the boundary of the self. Where do we start becoming ourselves? At what, literal distance? Is it inside? Is it outside of us? At what point do we locate ourselves? And so this question is what motivated, I suppose, or was kind of the driving force behind my earlier work in video. I started as a painter in school, and I guess as an artist, and painting and image making and the material of paint and color has remained a very important part of my work. But when I was in college and studying art in a, kind of like serious art way, I was initially like really frustrated because every type of image that I would try to make, all so different from one to the other. And at that time, I thought that sort of consistency was somehow like the hallmark of good art, if we can use that phrase, which is silly. But I started making video, and it was really exciting because I could combine time and my body and space. So here are some of those first videos. Is this screen big on your computers? Okay, cool.
I see you the bestest, leaning for a big kiss, put his favorite perfume on, go play a video game. It's you, it's all for you, everything I do. Who are you? Wherever you want me to be. Does it hurt? Yes. What can you do about it? I don't know.
So in all of those early videos, I was really interested in, I don't know, I'm still interested in playing with color and shapes and composition and looking at the self, not so much from the perspective of like there is something particular about me that I'm interested in, but more so in that I am the person who is available to me to work with as an artist. I am the performer or the body that I can work with to investigate just what it feels like to exist. At the same time, a lot of that work was really motivated by a kind of anxiety that I suppose I later identified as an anxiety about narrative, and an anxiety that originates from media and originates from this idea that, I think particularly in reality television, that there are only certain narratives that are worth talking about, or there's only certain stories that are worth telling, whether those, whether you look at that from like the perspective of representation in television, or just like on American Idol, or any of these like singing competition shows. People love a rags to riches story, and you have to be able to identify your suffering and your pain in order to make a story somehow relatable or worth telling. And this is something that I really like struggled with, this notion of, I feel like I don't have anything to say, even though I very much love making things, and I love making art, and I want to live life with the perceived freedom of being an artist. And I also want to feel free in myself, which I think that is a real freedom in making. So these were like all of the kind of things that were like jangling around in my head. And it was very like non-verbal time in my art making. Okay, let's go back here. So after college, I moved to LA, and that was a great place because there's so much of a DIY and artist run space scene there. And I started performing, and I started writing these song cycles because music was a way that I could deliver words, and I felt like I could say what I wanted to say, and people would listen to it, and I could also entertain people. I love performing and I love entertaining. And this performance was called Joy Repeating It. It was kind of a big deal for me because I realized that I could interrupt my performance and I could talk and I could improvise. So that was a important moment, and still sort of investigating some spiritual questions of just like really basic questions of fear. How do you deal with fear? How do we deal with death, depression, loneliness? And then also finding moments of this odd physical comedy that was also present in the earlier videos I was making. Just like finding like funny moments with things and stuff. This is not funny. This is like a very serious moment where I'm like lighting something on fire. And I was also starting to make longer pieces. So this piece is called American Flag. Where is it? Okay. And this was a song cycle that was investigating, this was 2015. So it was like still in the same year as Ferguson and the murder of Michael Brown, which I don't know, I never got over that. A lot of times people ask me like, what do you think about what's happening now? And I don't, my brain is still like stuck back in Ferguson. So this particular song is called 1969, and it's about the nostalgia that we have, I think, sometimes for protests, movements of the civil rights era.
Fantasizing about the length of our picket lines in 1969, 1969, 69, 69, a legendary night, the climax of a hard and sweaty century-long run. The revolution still has not been televised. She hasn't come yet. She's bruised upon her thighs in the bondage of promises of 1969. Recorded it on film for her very first time. Held by the man, but his hands were lies. Used her for the cameras and then fucked her from behind. Black power bondage, his favorite kind. A homemade sex tape of 1969.
So I was making performances that were like 15 minutes long, and these cycles of songs, and sometimes they were really invested in metaphors like that song and equating BDSM with kind of a unfulfilled moment of protest, which I think we can all relate to now. And then sometimes like the performances were totally weird and didn't really go as planned or weren't as exciting as I maybe hoped them to be. This was a performance that I did with some friends, with Nate Seidman and Walt McClements at Human Resources in LA. And sometimes things like didn't fully come together. And I mean, that's really important part of the process of performing, is that as things are happening live, you know, you can only put in so much preparation. And I think at the time, like sometimes I guess I would, you know, feel really hard on myself that it wasn't this like perfect moment, but these kind of moments of experimentation or failure or like something fell flat or felt kind of off are pretty important to have in a performance practice. And I was also making these kind of like soft sculptures and starting to use text, but in a really sort of fleeting way. It says, "Oh my God, Molly, you're so brown that I barely even notice how fat you are." And then there are two snakes. And then the other snake says, "I know, it's crazy." And then the one says, "You're like black." And the other one says, "Well, seriously, don't tell Eve, but I've been tanning with Adam. He goes like every day." And then their snake says, "No." And then the one on the left says, "Yeah, he's really insecure." So just kind of continuing to work with these ideas of identity and fiction and storytelling and allegory and metaphors. And I was also sort of starting to explore character a bit more, which had always been a part of my life, because when I was a kid, I used to take acting classes and be in plays, but never much of a convincing actor, which is how I got into performing. This video is called Bathtub Music.
God, you didn't even let anything stop you. You just gave me your money. Here's my money. Take it. I know you will. Take it. Take it. Take it. And I just couldn't resist. They have to take your $12. I want to smell some money. I want to smell like it, and then I want you to give it to me. But don't give me $12. Give me 20 so I can get a good lunch. Oh, you're worth so much. I couldn't resist it. Just one of those big good lunch. Back Washingtons in their face. The rust in there. So rectangle. I love it. The paper. Who is that girl? I'm such a bitch, but that's the kind of bitch I am. I'm just gonna overpower you. I love sea salts and seasonings and reasons and seasonal clothes and seasonal position. I love it. Give it to me. Yeah, give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. I'm broke. That's the bitch I'm broke. So take me out next Friday. That's the bitch I am. And I won't say $12.
So yeah, having fun with characters and poetry and making fun of business. And also at this time, I started studying theatrical clowning. This video is not really, this video I made before I really started learning about clown. But I felt like a clown in the sense that, well, in this one video, I'm talking about these young kids who walked by my studio, and I thought that one of them said the N-word under their breath. And so I wanted to somehow make fun of that, but it wasn't really that funny. So this is definitely more of like a Joker clown moment, but also at this time I started studying theatrical clowning, and that was so impactful to me and so important. And a lot of people like don't know what like clowning is, because we have so many different types of clown in society. You know, there's like birthday clowns, there's medical clowns, who are people who make people who are in the hospital laugh and bring some joy to them. There's serial killer clowns. There's now on the internet, there's this kind of like Instagram, like TikTok makeup clown. There's juggalo clowns. But this type of clown, it's a performance style that comes out of commedia dell'arte, and it really prioritizes honesty and direct connection with your audience and making eye contact with the audience. And the main difference between the clown and the actor is that the actor plays to the audience, but the clown plays with the audience. So this time, I think this was like a funny time when I really wanted to explore humor, and it is humorous, but I mean, the humor is very dark, which is like pretty consistent with my work. But I was starting to like find that voice a little bit of kind of like, haha, hee hee, it's so funny, but actually it's not funny. But actually, you know, it's funny again. And studying clown, which I've now been doing for 5 years, has been so important to that, because at the end of the day, I think maybe different from how this character was, the theatrical clown is somebody who is always enthusiastic and always willing to try again, and always you know, wants to have fun with the audience, which is one of the reasons or one of the things that I think I found people have talked about in my work the most is humor, because a lot of times when we go into an art space, we're not really expecting something to be funny, or people aren't really like primed for humor, or like out of all of the arts, for some reason, like visual artists are like, oh, so serious and like sad and whatever. So humor was also something that I got to really have so much fun with in writing when I wrote my first book, which is my Wet Hot Drone Summer, which I have many copies of if you want to buy it direct from me, because it's out of print from the publishers. And also, long story, but I have a lot of copies. And so that is available for sale. Shameless plug. But my Wet Hot Drone Summer was the first like long narrative that I wrote, and it takes place in 2056, and it's about a hotshot lawyer named Mia Garner, and she's working on this class action lawsuit against the mayor of Miami, who has evicted people out of their homes while, he's enforcing martial law on the people who have been like uprooted out of their homes because the sea level is rising, because like Florida's going underwater. And so she goes on this adventure across the country with her stepbrother, and they meet all sorts of wild characters. And so this was a really fun, long project to work on, that sort of similar to this video, Bathtub Music, uses desire and sexuality and the body, and also like an American flag, uses sex and power as a way to create metaphors, but also as a way to bring attention, and also as a way, very specifically in this book, which is sci-fi erotica, it really pulls the reader in, because it's just so raunchy. And it was so fun to write, because it being both science fiction and erotica, there was just no need for any kind of like boundaries or any kind of like reins. It was just like total free for all to create in this way. So after that, I went to grad school and got to work on some fun projects that sort of took me, pushed me out of just making this song cycle sort of format. And this was a piece called Run Bambi, and that's Kate Ruggieri on the left and Erica West on the right. And this was a very non-linear narrative about girlhood and identity, but not in a very direct way, more about identity in a kind of like group dynamic sense of, who is inside the group, who's outside of the group, who feels like they're inside of the group, who feels like they're outside of the group. And then also using the story of Bambi, which is, and the audio track from Bambi 2 to mix and create original audio. And Bambi is a story of animals who are in an idyllic state, and then man enters the forest with his gun. And so using that storyline as the kind of like abstract basis for this story, in which these three characters are together and coexisting in this kind of like abstract, maybe a post-apocalyptic place. That's what some people said. I didn't really think of it that way. I thought of it more as in this like space of poetry. And then this male character walks through and he drops off this like bunch of rags and doesn't really say anything. And then we all fight over the rags. So I starting to like explore like non-linearity and narrative, and also building these speculative worlds, and just using the sort of poetics as a connective tissue. I was also still doing song cycles. I mean, I still do everything that I'm talking about in this like past tense voice, but I just figured I would talk about things today in a chronological format, because going between different forms is sometimes, we jump around a lot, but okay, here's my timestamp. So this was a piece called Sylvester Ford that this was like in between my years of grad school, and I was starting to also learn more about my family history and use family as an inspiration while talking about this, while also putting things into this like speculative, fictional place.
Say, do you have it? Because I want it. Did you take it from me? Can I get it if I give it if I don't have it? Can I give it if I bought it? Can I give it if I talk it? What is it? Is it freedom? Is it love? Is it a gun? Choose one. Choose love. Choose love today. But say it was a pain inside of your brain that wouldn't go away because you was a descendant of slaves. Say it was a pain that just wouldn't go away. But say it was a pain in your brain because you was a descendant of slaves. Say it was a pain that wouldn't go away until you say, would you say, would you say, all the muses gather all around me. Ruby ridges touched by falling back. And their black hair braided, crowning them with fury. They call the ancestors out from the long and lonesome rest. Up from their graves they turn and blew the ashes. I'm built to shield the hunter from my bones. While helicopters rage and guns were spinning. And God had left me in the woods alone. No one is my master. I've been running too long. And you can't stop me, no, the fear won't stop me. You can see me in the woods.
So that was clip of this performance, Sylvester Ford, and then a couple years later, I re-performed some of those songs along with other songs at a performance at the Munch Museum. And I was also then starting to break things apart. And so like the song cycles wouldn't necessarily always tell a story. Like in American Flag, for example, the first song that I played was, that you guys heard, was 1969. Then there was another song called I Can Swim. That was like a very like upbeat kind of like rappy song. And then there was like a slow song called Strange Body. And there wasn't like a plot or anything, but it did follow a narrative arc. There was a build. There's always been very strong attention that I paid to like, what is the energetic pattern of the thing, even if there isn't like a story or a plot. And then I guess from having the experience of writing a long plot, a long narrative, and a long story with my Wet Hot Drone Summer, I was thinking about how can I like take this form that I've been working in with these song cycles, where like in Sylvester Ford, there was that song called Muses, and then after that was another song called Bad Attitude, and then there was which was a rap, and then there was another song called In the Trees. Like, how can I take this I don't know, this energetic thing, and then how can I also add a plot to it, but make it more improvisational and not just like follow this sort of what had become like a predictable pattern to me. So this performance was called Blank, 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 5 blanks, like the word horse. And there were these different poses that I made. So this was one of the positions, was like playing this demo beat from this keyboard, like this like trap beat, and twerking on a wall. And then there was these like sculptural objects that I used in the place of people's bodies. So there was like this sort of short monologue that I did as this sort of like Southern belle person saying, "Daddy, oh no, Daddy," to this like piece of wood. And then there was a home shopping network host who has appeared in performances that have happened since then. Her name is Menanda, and she's always asking for those last 4 digits of your social, just need those last 4 digits. And Menanda sells corn, and Menanda also sells various other products that you might like to have, like Clean Couture. And so what I used was this high intensity workout training app that would like call out different positions. So it randomized it for me. So I didn't know where I would be going next for the performance. And so I would have to like run in between these different places and perform these different tasks that were all still, I think, very much really rooted in racial and gender identity, but with the like disjointing the narrative, I was still trying to like push myself away from the kind of like typical images and like which I did use in this performance, like, you know, singing the national anthem with like a voice filter that sounds like a siren, or like twerking on a wall. These are still very familiar, rote, you know, what's that word? Trope, the tropes. And I want to like push away from that, like still more. And so in pushing away from that, what I got to was the work that was my thesis work in grad school, which is a soap operetta called Focaccia Town, which takes place in a medieval future of the United States, where there are various military bases that are like the organizing governing body. And so Focaccia Town is a military base / fast casual dining fast casual bakery chain. The whole plot for Focaccia Town evolved out of this monologue that I had written as one of the characters, where she's talking over brunch about her baby being in like an incubator, and also about a man who got shot at a party at their house for bringing a bag of chips. And this idea of Black people and brown people being killed by the police, just like, you know, from the jump, and so many of them having some kind of food with them, you know, in particular, like Trayvon Martin, who had the Skittles, or another young man named Alex Nieto, who was killed in San Francisco in like 2016, I believe. He had like a burrito. And so kind of like running forward with this idea of a country that is organized by food and beverage industry, and also where like those things become weaponized, sort of led me to Focaccia Town. And then later I also realized that there were elements of the family structure, because it centers around this nuclear family. The daughter's name is Brioche, like the bread, like brioche. And her father's a military general, and her mother's the head of like branding and marketing. I later realized that there were aspects of my family life and my upbringing that I was also processing through this piece, but I kind of didn't recognize that at the time. It's funny how you can make art and then a couple years later realize, oh, that's what it was also really about. So it was a live performance, but I made this sort of like video script document as a kind of alternative documentation for it. This is just a clip from it.
They were all pigs. 4-eyed, fat-legged, once upon a time. Oh my God, I can't go back out there. Oh, you've got to go back out there. I've got to go pull it together, pull it together. Confidence, confidence. Okay, we've got to seal the deal, but if the Post Times gives us a bad review, we will lose it. No, Ariel, confidence for Focaccia Town. Get it together, get it together. I'll be right back in it. She'll be right back. But in the meantime, I can tell by the look on your faces that you are confident about the new direction that we are headed with focaccia holes. They're bite-sized.
So I was using this, what do I want to call it, thing, I don't know, of finding different body positions to be different characters so that I could play all these different characters. And also I wrote this in 2016, 17. So this was right when like Trump was elected. And I had been like planning this idea of, oh, I want to write this story called Focaccia Town, but like how do I even make a narrative or like a satire when we are like living in reality television? So that was also a big inspiration. That's a big part of the DNA of the piece, is just like making it, certain parts of it feel very implausible or, you know, ridiculous, absurd. But these, like the rules of that world of Focaccia Town are also very imaginable as a world that we could live in, because we do live in it. And so it's really not that wild to think about somebody showing up to a party with a bag of chips and then being shot for it. And so that was the first Focaccia Town. And I don't want to give any spoilers because you might want to watch Focaccia Town Reloaded. But so Focaccia Town is an hour-long piece. And then I made Focaccia Town Reloaded 2 years later, and it condenses the entire hour-long piece into 20 minutes. And so in this original story, there's a teenage girl, her name is Brioche, and she, this man comes to their house, he's shot, then she finds out who his real identity is, and she finds out who she really is. And then in the second story, that whole narrative is retold by two different narrators. There's these two time travelers, the unnamed like space-time travelers, who are trying to go somewhere in like a very distant deep space that I sort of equate to like a very advanced stage of human existence where our consciousnesses are more fully realized, and they're trying to like travel at warp speed between point G and point H. But then they find there's a tear in their data stream, and the tear in the data stream is that the whole original telling of the story of Focaccia Town it has become manipulated and like fragmented by the news broadcasting of that story. And so these two time travelers are understanding that after the whole original plot line of Focaccia Town happened, then there was a kind of like media intervention by this newscaster named Melanie.
It's Melanie reporting live from Focaccia Town, where an unnamed man was just shot, but now to the exclusive footage. What is this guy? Put the bag down now! Put the bag down now! Put it down! The bag of chips was found, the body was not. What will you do with the evidence?
And so that scene gets played over and over again. The bag of chips was found, the body was not. What will you do with the evidence? And every time that it's replayed, the characterization that Melanie makes of this man, whose name is Andre Clay, Hannibal, he transforms from his original identity, which is that he is a kind of radical for the people. He is the editor of a poetry magazine, and then he eventually is transformed into this violent and crazy man. And then you see Antoine, who's Brioche's father, just become like totally crazed, and also they're and religiously motivated. There's a group of people called the Crusade who have coerced Melanie into changing this narrative storyline. So those Crusaders are sort of inspired by very conservative, alt-right people, sort of crazed evangelicals who I've had some experience with in life. But this Focaccia Town Reloaded was performed at, here's some of the music, performed at the Kitchen, where I had a show in 2019, which now seems like 10 years ago. All the music was original and arranged by Molly Joyce, who's an amazing composer. She has a great album called Breaking and Entering that you can listen to online. So we collaborated. She's not in this photo. She's playing the keyboard, which is not in this image, but she was my collaborator for the first and second Focaccia Towns. There were also these costume I made and the set I made as well, and these objects, props. This is like a giant rubber stake. So in between those two focaccia towns, I had a show at Deli Gallery, which is a gallery that represents me, and I wanted to draw. I hadn't really drawn in a long time. I mean, like throughout all of this work that I've been sharing, there's a lot of elements of drawing thinking or painting thinking, but I hadn't actually been drawing in a very, like formal way or very focused way as like the end result of my work. But after doing Focaccia Town, I have to take a break after doing like a really big performance like that. And so I started working on these text drawings that had the text really like embedded in the image, and that similar to the song making, it was about how do I deliver text, deliver verbal information in a way that is actually like captivating to a viewer and like is not boring. So this show is called Immortal Duck, and I also made those Daffy Duck drawings. I wrote a poem about Daffy Duck as this kind of like immortal clown figure who can be, has this like plastic life where he can be like constantly foiled by Bugs Bunny, but he just kind of like keeps coming back. And then, okay, now I'm going forward again to the show at the kitchen. It was in 2019. Try to go through this stuff quickly. So for this show, the kitchen has two spaces. They have a theater space. They also have a gallery space. So this was in the gallery space. And I wanted to build out the walls to have these kind of like infinity walls to sort of feel like a iPhone store, or this this place where like the limits between like video and reality were they just kind of like seamlessly blend into each other. And I made very large drawings. This is a drawing, it's 7 by 5 feet. It's mounted onto a panel. It says, when someone's trying to have a serious conversation with you and you're just thinking about food. This is another one, it's a longer poem. And so these videos and these drawings were all activated by motion sensor. So the lights would come on at different, like if you were over here to the left, then that would activate the motion sensor to the right. So it was a way to, one, make the experience of viewing drawing and video a bit more interactive or performative. And two, in the videos, which are, there are 3 channels of video, and they illustrate, I suppose, this world this world of this another fast casual chain called Ice and Cream that doesn't sell ice cream, they just sell ice and cream. And also in this video world, there's a like TV star named Elephant Hill, and there's bloggers and vloggers. But the main point of this world is that it's a world in which people pay for things with video content instead of money. And the idea with the motion sensors was that you have this interactive element. 2, you couldn't view the whole story unless multiple people were in the space. Like you literally couldn't watch all of it at once unless other people were there. So that there is an importance of having multiple perspectives. And then 3, the initial idea was that when you got close, the closer you got to the motion sensor, the more mediated the storytelling would become. And the drawings were at a very different pace and like at a very different register than the videos. The videos are all about this sort of like commercial branding bullshit world that we all live in. The drawings are a bit more closer to the heart. This one says the wound is not for sale. And marked an important point for me where around this time and a little bit before that, I had decided, and also with Town, the first one and the second one, had decided that I didn't want to use my own story, the same story that I was talking about earlier, you know, like a million minutes ago about this. I didn't want to use my own personal trauma or the story of my on trauma or shared trauma of identity as the central focus of my work. I think it's really important, of course, to talk about real personal events, real historical events, but there is a very counterproductive way that the art industry and culture industries capitalize on narratives of trauma in a way that it makes it very difficult for individuals to escape that narrative as their like only identity. So this piece was kind of like an oath to just not do that anymore. That's also one of the things that fiction and creating narrative has given me, is like the freedom to not have to process life's pains and inequalities. It doesn't all have to like be processed through this register of like, this is the truth. Because the reality is like the world that we live in is constructed around a bunch of lies. And that's why so many people, we all, you know, suffer, and we all experience like so many more garbage feelings than we really need to. So that's been an evolution in my practice, is kind of understanding understanding the role that media and marketing and corporate language and corporate structure, the way that actually, you know, filters into individual experience in ways that sometimes you hear a voice in your head, you know, telling you something that's like about yourself that's not true, and you don't even recognize that it's not you. It's actually like from a TV show or an ad, or it's from the way that like Chipotle has decided to do their interior design. Like our whole this whole world of design that we live in really affects our psyches in ways that we, you know, can't always tell. So this is a project that sort of deals with that. It's called The Inside Room. Another, you know, crazy narrative where these two young men are in this self-driving car, and the car, they fall asleep in the car, and the car's like GPS takes over, and it starts their navigation based on branded content, and the branded content has to be this like court case between these two people who work at like a development company, like real estate development company, but kind of like a nonprofit, but like maybe kind of not. And this lawyer named Tony Silvercreek, an associate. So this piece was all created in improvisationally. This is at Recess Art in Brooklyn. And it uses some of those same ideas of branding and marketing. And like Animal Static, which was the show of the kitchen, a lot of it made through imitation. Okay, I'm gonna blast through these drawings. These are a show called They Flew to Planet Nova at Kate Werble Gallery. These are all color pencil and paper, and this one's called The Server Farm. So, okay, throughout my work, this has been this question of like identity. Who am I? Do I have a story to tell? Why is my story so weird? Why don't I feel like I have a story? What's the story? And something kind of clicked for me a few years ago to like actually look at where I'm from, which is Northern Virginia. And it's a place that is very close to the intelligence industry, the CIA, the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. And it's a very wealthy place, but it's also a place that's very covert. And there's this sort of weird, if you meet anybody from Northern Virginia, they'll tell you this. It's kind of like you don't know where you are. And it kind of eventually clicked for me of like, oh, so much of the industry of Northern Virginia has to do with technology. And this is the beginning of an exploration of how technology actually manifests itself in the landscape. Because the way that we interact with technology, like we're all looking at computers right now, is so different from the actual physical form that technology takes in our physical landscape, which actually, the way it looks like these server farms really look like fortresses. They really look like very unsophisticated architecture, very ugly architecture in my mind, very unadorned, undecorated. So that's something that I've been working on and working through and clicking with. But moreover, like this show was really just about, I think just taking some time to like embrace the weirdness of where I'm from and the weirdness of, you know, growing up without a sense of community. I mean, I had a lot of friends growing up, but you know, a community of, you know, neighborhood community, or also a cultural community. I just grew up outside of that. So kind of always felt like life has been sort of like science fiction. Okay. It's called wave sandwich too. Something that often happens. Waves when they or they don't wave back. I hope that we all get more friendly with each other soon. And I'll just end with this. This is the last show that I had at Delhi Gallery with my friend Jonathan Payne, who makes these amazing abstract geometric pieces. So still using text, and it's called Wave Sandwich 3. So I make 3 pieces with the burger. I like to do recurring themes. This piece on the right is called Liberty. Another piece that's sort of about making a kind of, I don't consider it a self-portrait, but I consider it like an archetype, or like if I could make a deity for my world that I'm from, that makes sense with my identity, it would be this being who has these like cookie cutter houses coming out of her head. It's also my version of the kind of, I feel like, requisite hair art that as a Black artist, you know, everybody's got to make art about hair. This is my hair art piece. And then also just, you know, texts about things that I believe in. Love. Where'd it go? I'll read it. It says, every utterance of love, 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 unmapped in history is love, 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 long forgotten love, 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 never leaves us, love, 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 undiscovered love, or locked up secret love, so bright love, so blue love, so long love, love is an undiscovered blue. And you're interested in another book, this book I made with Genderville Press, and it's a compendium of drawings and texts, not drawings actually, videos and performances, and a lot of lyrics from all these songs. So we made this book last year, and I shared a lot. So thank you, and I would love to hear any questions if there are questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lex. That was amazing. So I'm going to let people take a minute and type their questions in the chat. In the meantime, I had a general question, which I think some other people might share, is how your process looks like for creating a performance. So I know that you said in the past couple of years, it might have been more experimental or less structured, and then farther back maybe it was a little bit more structured. But I'm just curious what the process is. There's an idea, then you develop it. Is there a script, or kind of how that looks like for you?
Yeah, my process kind of looks like okay, I hope nothing falls out. It kind of looks like, see those Post-its on the wall, those papers? It kind of looks like that. I will I have all these ideas that are scraps, and they're in my iPhone notes, and they're on I just have paper everywhere, and I have tons of voice memos, and I just constantly write things or take note of things. When I'm about to fall asleep, I get a lot of ideas. And then I think a performance for me starts with either music or just really a costume or a color. There's a very particular feeling that I need to feel. And then I start have these little pieces, and I am putting them together. And I do a lot of, when I'm working on performance, I do a lot of it I have to move around, and I have to do it in my body. There's just a lot of there's a lot of things that I find through also with the when I have the microphone and I'm just talking. So I don't know, I kind of just find things, and then I put them together, and then make it make sense in whatever way it's going to make sense, which is that's the plot impulse, and that's the Focaccia Town impulse, or the the other stories, or the videos, the longer videos the Animal Static and the Inside Room. They have this plot thing. There are, of course, many performers who don't think about performance in that way. They think about doing a durational task. I very quickly became uninterested in doing endurance-based work, because it just always ends up in the same place, which is that somebody gets tired, and that's the end of the performance. It's always about the limits of the body or whatever. So yeah, I prefer to make my work with an idea of entertainment, of interaction, and also what's my point? Why should people come and spend time with me as I'm doing this thing? That's really, really important, is the audience and their experience. That's probably that between that and this, I don't know, this vibe, the energy, this very particular place that has a lot to do with Willy Wonka, which is where that first image was in the slideshow.
Gotcha. Thank you. We have a quick question from Sherry. If you could share that last page of your presentation, I think it had all your links on it.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And so while that's up there, we have a question from Nicole. She's curious who your favorite authors are and what you're currently reading.
You know, reading is such a funny thing to me because I kind of didn't read that much between like 2012 and 2017. I'm just now feeling like a love for again and a connection to it because so much of reading and that relationship with language was taken up by school and like the demands to be good at school. So with that being said, I feel like all my idea of like favorite authors is like when I was like a kid, but maybe my favorite author is Chuck Jones of Looney Tunes. And my favorite book that I read last year is Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, which just really got me through this year. And a very important piece to me as an artist from a writing perspective and just in general is the play Passing Strange by Stu, a musician. It's really just very liberating and fantastic and amazing. So if you haven't seen Passing Strange, I really highly recommend that. And let me see. My favorite authors. Yeah, I think of like movies as being my favorite books. Like The Matrix, The Big Lebowski, those two are very important. Cartoons. I'm the kind of person who picks up a book and then reads to like page 50 and then it's like, ooh, there's another book I can read. So another book that I'm reading right now is part of the, I think, Toltec Wisdom series. What is his name? Jose. Have you ever read The Four Agreements? He's a great bookmaker. He's not really an author, and I'm not sure. He's not what anybody. I don't think people would say he's like a great writer because his writing is very like easy to read and simple, and it's, I suppose, falls into like the self-help category. But The Four Agreements, I'm reading, what is it called? It's a book about love. I'm reading that now. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll think of some more and come back to it.
Thank you. And so we're just over the edge of 1 o'clock. I have one question and then we have one comment. So something that I was also curious about. So a lot of people here who are watching are MFA students. And I'm really curious if you have any advice for MFA students since you were one yourself and kind of how that experience maybe impacted you.
What do you want advice about to the question asker?
It's a very general question, I guess. I don't know, Sherry, if you had a specific aspect or just like a general advice, I guess.
My advice is stop what you're doing, and you have terrible ideas, and it doesn't make any sense, and why are you making these things? And don't listen to anybody who ever talks to you that way. Don't listen to anybody who ever has that energy of, you should stop what you're doing, or I don't get this, or this is useless. And I think that voice, we hear that voice from others, and we also hear it in our own heads a lot. And my biggest advice is to not listen to that voice, and don't trust that voice, because it's not real. And it's not a compassionate voice. And it's very important to trust yourself. It's very important to trust your intuition in art, and of course outside of art. I think being an artist is very hard. It's also very fun, of course, and like, you know, it's very satisfying, and it can be really fulfilling, but it's kind of an extreme lifestyle, because we don't live in a world that is built to value the things that we value. So at every moment you're doing something that nobody asked you to do. And that's not really typical for the way that most live. Most people are spending the majority of their mental energy doing things that, you know, are either required or that are like asked of them. Of course, yeah, as artists, we do all those things too, like, you know, to pay bills and live. But in the sense of like, in the sense of, you know, like devotion, or what you have devotion to, being in an MFA program is one way to sort of like formalize this sense of devotion to an idea or a path or a desire. And once you get out of school and out of this environment where everybody, you know, whether or not you like their art or you agree with them, they're all kind of in the same boat with you. And once you're out of school, it's not like that. And I also think you learn more about the art market, and you learn more about the various players in the art world. Can kind of be scary to still trust yourself, like trust that you have more answers than you think you do. But it's really, 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 really important. You know, like don't let somebody else's ideas or criteria or whatever rule your life. And getting out of grad school, because you're leaving this structure, especially now, like everything is so structureless. So I would imagine that being in school now is really, you know, it's a thing that is a glue that holds life together. So there's a very big temptation once you get out of that, you know, you're kind of like freaking out a little bit. And I think after grad school is actually the time when a lot of people get really lost, and it's really disorienting, or it can be, and it can be really rough. It's kind of like the year after grad school, like the year or two after grad school is like this other part of grad school that nobody really prepares you for. And it's just so important to listen to the small voice in your head that is just like telling you something over and over and over again, to like really listen to that, because you know. And working in a very unstable, unregulated industry in a very unstable and unregulated world right now is yeah, you know, there's in the studio or whatever is like the kind of world of your practice, that's like a place where you have, you know, some degree of like control or like calling the shots. But once you get outside of that, I don't know, there's so many other things, so many other factors. So it's just, as the shepherd of your work, yeah, trust yourself. I can't say it enough. Just trust yourself, you know, listen to other people too, evaluate their advice, but at the end of the day, don't think that somebody else knows what is better for you. You have to listen to your gut, and you have to listen to your gut and what it tells you about other people, and, you know, who to work with or who not to work with. Yeah, you just have to listen to your gut.
Thank you. I think we can all virtually clap to that advice. And the last comment we have, since we're over time, is from Christy. You can go ahead if you have that comment.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to have to, I just have to say, like, you just completely altered like my life. Like, I make props, I make videos, I write weird stories, I do all this stuff. I have to just 2 seconds, because this is going to seal the deal. I'm working on this painting of me in like this pink box off of this drawing that I got the pink film out and did this whole thing about my first semester in grad school. And like, you spoke to the same pink box with the same pink gel, and it just blew my mind. I love you, and thank you for giving me that, because literally that you will be with me. I'm buying your book right away. So I have you in here.
Thank you so much. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think it's like, it's kind of like a tragedy of the time we live in now, where, I don't know, I feel like there's not so many shows that are curated around the fact that like we all have like common ideas, and like we're all living in the same world. We have different perspectives, but especially the world that we live in, where like so much of like the actual built world, like architecture, is all like prefabricated. There's standardized measurements. There's all this stuff that's really common. And I think maybe like a sad thing or like a pitfall of the way sort of like art world feels to me is that like in a, you know, the corporate or commercialized art world, is that we don't, or even like institutionally, there aren't as many moments where you realize like, oh my gosh, like I've got cinder blocks in my art, and so does that person, and that person, that person. I've been like called out by certain artists for like, oh my God, you were copying me because you used a cinder block, which is like, hello, they're everywhere. So I'm really excited by that. I think it's really wonderful whenever as artists we can recognize like, wow, like, oh, like I'm thinking about that too, or like, yes, I'm doing this very generic thing, that, not to say that's generic, but just I'm thinking about my own work, like certain things that I'll make and be like, is this too generic? And I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, yeah, it's a part of life. And, you know, it's just, it's great to hear that. And it's great to make those types of connections. I can't wait until we can like be people again. I think it's going to be really super fun to not just be like brains connected to screens, but to like, oh my goodness, it's going to be so exciting. Like white cube is going to become relevant again just because it's literally a physical space. But thank you so much. That's really wonderful to hear, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and the thighs kept looking like really bruised, and I kept like trying to like cut that back. I was like, why do they keep looking so bruised? And then when you said bruised thighs, I was like, oh shit. Like in another piece, you're sorry.
Oh,
anyway,
crazy.
I'm just excited about everything.
That's cool. No, synchronicities are awesome. And You're on the right path.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So
Yeah, thank you.
that, I'm going to go ahead and end today's lecture. Before I say goodbye, I just want to plug that PAFA has a great evening of programming celebrating the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which starts at 6 p.m. and the link to that is in your email. So with that, thank you so much for joining us for this Visiting Artist Program lecture with Lex Brown, and we will see you in 2 weeks for our next lecture.